Hi everybody, welcome back to Healthy Togetherness. Today I am very excited to be sharing with you how I make sourdough bread from scratch. Now I consider myself more a cook as opposed to a baker, but there is just something absolutely satisfying in making your own sourdough bread. And I'm very excited to be sharing that with you. Today we're going to be using my sourdough starter. I've had this sourdough starter since I made this one in November of 2020, and it is now May of 2021. So this has been with me for quite a long time. It is very reliable, very tangy, and it's got a strong sourdough smell to it. I'm so proud of this little guy. If you would like to know how to make your own sourdough starter, just click on the link in the description below, and I'll share how I prepare my sourdough starter also. Alright, I'm going to be making the sourdough starter step by step, and I'm going to also be sharing with you how I knead things by hand. In the first maybe 1 or 2 times, I think it's a great idea to be kneading a dough by hand as opposed to a machine. Just so that you get a feel for the texture and how a dough is supposed to feel, whether it's too dry or too wet or it's just right. And then after that, go ahead and use a stand mixer for you. If you are going to be using a standard mixer, please follow the instructions. And I say that because I had a stand mixer also, and apparently I didn't follow the instructions as well as I should have, and now it's in need of repair. So please follow the manufacturer's instructions for your specific stand mixer. But today, we're going to be doing things by hand. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Here are the ingredients for our sourdough bread. First, we have a sourdough starter. This is the one that I made at home. It is a 1-to-1 ratio between flour and water. And we're going to be using about 500 grams of this sourdough starter. We have filtered water. This is 335 grams that we're going to be using, and it is at 105 degrees Fahrenheit. All-purpose flour. This one we're going to be using about 664 grams of the AP flour. And kosher salt, about 18 grams. Okay. I have the recipe of these ingredients in the description below also. Now, I've mentioned everything is that all the ingredients are measured in grams, so it would be a great idea for you to have a scale that can measure in grams. This is a wonderful scale. I love it because it's very easy to switch from ounces to grams without having to flip any switches. I've had one where you have to remove the battery, flip a switch to switch it from ounces to grams, and I use both. And so I like the convenience of this one just because you can just push a button and your units change. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, 664 grams of all-purpose flour. This is organic flour, by the way. I figured that if we're going to go through all the trouble of making our own bread, let's go ahead and use the best quality ingredients. I have, let's see, 18 grams of kosher salt. that. Right. We get 500 grams of our sourdough starter. Tear that. Okay. Look at the bubbles on that, on the sourdough starter. It's like, and the smell, it's amazing. Oh. $500 grams, okay. Now when you're making your own sourdough bread, be sure not to use up all of your sourdough starter. Leave some so that you have, you can just, all you have to do is feed it and you have a very strong, reliable sourdough starter. Okay. And then 335 grams of water. Okay. A little too much water. Alrighty. Now I like to start my kneading process in a bowl like this so that the water and all my ingredients don't go flying all over the place, and then I'll transfer it to a cutting board so I can go ahead and knead it by hand. Of course, if you're using a stand mixer, everything goes into the mixing bowl. But again, I encourage you to knead it by hand at least 1 or 2 times, just so you get an idea of the texture of the dough. Okay, just trying to get everything incorporated. Okay, so right now, if you've not kneaded dough before, in the beginning when you have this, it's going to look very not smooth. It's very crumbly, I guess it would be something one would say. The way I like to describe it is, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons. In that movie, a baby played by Brad Pitt is born, and it looks like the skin of the baby is the texture like an old man, very wrinkly, and like an old person's skin. But as the baby grows older, he looks younger and younger, and his skin starts to become smooth and like that of a regular baby. So anyway, the reason I brought that up is because this is how your dough is going to start off. It's going to look very wrinkled and not very smooth in the beginning, but then after you knead it, it's going to be nice and smooth. Okay. So there are many ways to knead a dough. The way I do it is you just take the dough, stretch it back, fold it towards the front and push down, rotate it 90 degrees, pull back, push down. Then do the same thing. Okay, and I'm just going to keep doing that until the dough is smooth. And there is an actual test that I do, the window pane test, at the end to let me know when the gluten have all formed properly. Okay, and I do have my extra flour over here if I need it. I try not to use any more flour because we've taken the time to try and measure this as well as possible, and I try to resist adding more flour. But the environment around you does have some kind of influence on your dough. If, like right now, it feels a little bit humid, it's cold and it's a little bit humid, so there's going to be extra moisture in the air that's going to be attracted to this, and it's going to kind of moisten your dough a little bit more. So maybe a little bit of flour would help. The way I do it is I just take some flour, put it on my hands, rub it, and that's about all I'm going to add until I feel that it needs a little bit more flour. All right, so no more talking for right now. I'm going to be kneading this. I'm going to be kneading this for about 20 minutes. Oh, and I have a little dough bench scraper here, so that if it looks like it's sticking too much onto my cutting board, this is a wonderful tool. All right, I'm going to go ahead and record this portion, but I'm going to put it in fast speed, so just so in case you have not seen how a dough is kneaded, you'll have that as a reference to help you out. Otherwise, go ahead and skip to the part where I'm finished kneading the dough. Here you go. Set time for 20 minutes, please. So I've kneaded this dough now for about 20 minutes. And one thing that you can do to check to see if the gluten has developed enough is just take a little golf ball size piece of your dough. Okay, like that. And then try to see if you can stretch it to the point that you can see light go through it. This is called the window pane test. I don't know if the camera can catch this, but I can see light go through it now. It's thin enough that I can see light go through it, and the dough hasn't torn. All right, so I know that I've kneaded this well enough. Also, you can see how smooth the dough is now, as opposed to how wrinkled it was in the beginning. The dough is now nice and smooth. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a stretched side here. I'm going to put some flour on my hands. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move all the seams of this towards one part of the dough ball. In other words, this is going to be all smooth and stretched, and the seam is going to be all on one side, and that's going to help us trap as much of the carbon dioxide inside of the dough. If it has too much places to escape, then it doesn't help the dough to rise. All right. What I'm doing is I'm just taking the dough and I'm stretching it so that the seam is all at the bottom. Like that. And then to seal the bottom, we're going to just leave it on the... Can't see that to the camera. We're just going to leave it for about maybe a minute, less than that, so that it seals naturally. While I'm waiting for that to seal, I'm going to use this little Dutch oven as a proofing container for the first proof. So I'm going to add very little amount of a neutral flavored oil. This is just canola oil, and it'll just keep prevent the dough from sticking. All right. Now I'm going to just go ahead and scrape the dough, and I'm going to put it seam side down on this. Okay, there we go. And we're going to let this proof until it about doubles in size. I'm going to put this in a relatively cool part of the house and room temperature. Right. And we'll be back when this is ready for the final proofing. Hello, we're back. All right. Our dough is doubled in size, and we're going to go ahead and transfer it onto the mold that's going to be shaping our bread, and it's going to proof a second time in that mold. So I have two types of molds here. This is the traditional banneton, right? This is the circular one, and what you do with this one is, what's nice about this one is when you put the dough in here, the dough takes on the shape of all of these little ridges, and it makes a very beautiful design on the bread when it's baked. If you don't have one, a regular bowl will do. Right? And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to prep this one so that the dough doesn't stick to it. What I have here is a clean pillow case. I only use this one for baking. Okay, and what we normally do is we put flour on this, but if you put flour on this bowl, all of it's gonna go into the bottom, and all the dough is gonna stick on the sides. Okay, so what we do is we take a clean cloth. I personally like this pillowcase because it is large. Right? And what we do is we take some flour and we put it on top. Notice that it's flat. I didn't push it down yet. Alright, so now after we did that, okay, our dough, just imagine this balloon is our dough. Let's just shape it into a ball. Right? We're going to take it, and as we push down, the cloth basically envelops our dough. Right? And then all the flour comes to the sides of the dough too. And then if you want a little bit more flour, then you just kind of tuck it in on the sides like this. And then we have a built-in cover. The rest of the pillowcase becomes a cover for it. Right? Okay. So that's how I did my bread before I decided to purchase the Benetton. There is an advantage to doing it this way though, because when you do it this way, what you have is a flat dome, right? And because it's flat, there are no designs on it. You can feel free to go ahead and put any kind of design on it. You can be very creative with the kind of pictures that can be put on the bread. Okay, so, but since we have the Benetton, we'll go ahead and take advantage of that. We're going to prep the Benetton by just putting some flour on it. Now I've heard that the best flour to use for this would be rice flour, because the rice flour does not have any type of gluten, and so when it gets wet it doesn't promote sticking. I don't have any rice flour. I really don't want to purchase a rice flour just to keep this thing from sticking, and no other purpose. Okay, but what I do is I generously flour the Benetton, and you see, because of the ridges, the flour doesn't all settle to the bottom. It clings to the sides. Okay, so that's ready. I'm going to put that aside. Put a light dusting of flour on our board here. Take our dough. Alright. Basically we're going to make a bowl out of it. A ball. Okay, we're just going to go and stretch it out. And what we're trying to do here is eliminate any type of seam, or have all the seams go at the bottom, or only on one side, so we can trap as much gas as possible. Okay. Now that we've done that, fold it over. Right. And basically we have all the seam now is on one side. Okay. I'm just going to let that rest for maybe about, I don't know, 20-30 seconds just so the seam will seal. Make sure that it's good. Okay. Now I'll just let that rest for about 20-30 seconds so that the weight of the dough will seal the seams at the bottom. Go ahead and put flour on the top here, again just to prevent sticking. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the bowl, seam side up. This is going to be the top of the bread, so that when we are ready to bake it, right, we're just basically going to invert the Benetton. This is going to be on the top, and that's how the bread is going to bake. All right. All right. Again, like that. If any type of seam that you see, just go ahead and pinch it closed. All right. And then we'll put a little bit more flour here. Okay. And then you can use your tablecloth, your what do you call that? Pillowcase to cover it up, or this Benetton actually came with a little cover. Like that. I personally like the cloth better, the pillowcase better, because it allows me to check easily if the dough has risen enough without having to play with the elastic. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and return this to that cool, dry place where I had the original rice, and wait for this to double in size. We'll be back when that happens. Our dough is almost ready to go in the oven. It has proofed a second time enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my oven to 425 degrees, get it warmed up. My oven takes about half an hour to get the temperature. So I'll go ahead and get it started. So what I do is, this is what I'm going to put my bread in when I cook it. So I'm going to go ahead and warm it up inside the oven. If you have a baking stone, put it in the oven and warm it up as well. With a baking stone, you just have to have some kind of like a baker's peel to transfer the dough onto the baking stone. This way, well, I'll show you, but I just take it out, put the dough on, and then put it back in the oven. Now, I also have another tray up here where I'm going to put 2 cups of water, and as the oven warms up, the water will heat up, and that's going to provide me with a steam that I need for baking the bread. Now the 2 cups of water is going to give me about 15 minutes of steam while the bread bakes, which is perfect. What the steam does 2 things. One, it gives you a better crust and also a better bread, because the steam prevents the crust from baking too fast, baking and hardening. It keeps it soft so that the bread has time to expand before the crust hardens. And what that does is, because it has time to expand, your bread is not going to be so dense. And 2, by the time that all the steam is gone, then the bread will have an opportunity, the crust will have an opportunity to really bake, and it'll give you a crispy crust. So, okay, here we go. when the oven is ready, we'll come back. Well, look at that. Our dough has puffed up, about doubled in size, so that's looking really good. Let me get our pan out of the oven. It's wonderful. I felt the steam coming out of the oven when I opened the door, so that's working well. Okay, so I'm gonna just pour a little bit of, or not pour, just sprinkle a little bit of flour on this so that the dough doesn't stick. Okay, next. And this isn't gonna plop out like I would hope it would, but because the flour that I'm using is regular flour, it's gonna have gluten on it. The moisture from the bread is going to cause it to stick a little bit, but not too much, hopefully. All right, here we go. Not bad at all. Look at that. I like that. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and put a little cut on this. That'll help the bread expand a little bit more. And just for trivia, this is how breads were marked, so you know which one is your bread. When breads were being done in, like I would say, colonial days, homes didn't have ovens, so there was a community oven, and if you wanted to bake your bread, you had to put some kind of mark on it to identify yours from other people's. So I am choosing to put a V on my bread to mark mine. Now this is a baker's lame, basically a really sharp razor blade. But if you don't have one, go ahead and use a knife. Right, this is going to go back in the oven. And we're going to bake that for 35 minutes. All right, we'll be right back. All right, everybody, moment of truth. Let's take a look at the bread. Ooh, hot. Ooh, look at that. Look how amazing that looks. It is so beautiful. All right, so we got to pop it out of the pan. So I have a clean towel here, and all I gotta do is just take it. It shouldn't stick. Ta-da! Alright, I have another clean towel here. What we're gonna do, let me see if I can get it in camera. Alright, is just take a clean towel and wipe off any of the excess flour. Alright. Alright, and also the top side. Oh, hot. Alright. Alright, and what you can do, you can take the bottom of this and just hear how that sounds. It sounds very hollow. That's how you know that the bread is ready, it's cooked. About 35 minutes or so. And look at that crust. Oh, look at how crispy that crust is. Nice, nice. Okay, now, as excited as I am, we cannot cut into this yet because it has to cool. It is very hot. So, a little bit more patience. Ta-da! Make sure you put it in a cooling rack because there's still steam inside. It's coming out. If it's put on a flat surface, the bottom part is just going to be soggy. So either put it on a cooling rack or lay it down somehow so that the steam has a chance to kind of escape. Wow, look at that! Wow. You know what? I'm gonna let this bread cool down, but I don't think I'm gonna cut it up. This is so beautiful, and I have someone that I would really like to give it to, so I'm gonna gift it to them. And yes, I'm very proud of this bread. Right. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you've learned quite a lot about how to prepare a sourdough bread in this video, and I hope that you try it yourself. Look at how beautiful that is. Alright. Again, the full recipe is going to be in the description below. And also there's going to be a link in the description below for how to make your own sourdough starter. Right. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Take care.